Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a toolkit that is an absolute game changer for empowering deaf and hard of hearing youth. I'm incredibly excited to unpack this with you because we're looking at a journey that transforms vulnerability into confident self-determination. From those very first early childhood decisions all the way through to navigating the adult workplace, the systems we set up today directly dictate the independence of these individuals tomorrow.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the core DHH Empowerment Toolkit. Then dig into our first major focus area, the Parental Guidance Guide. After that, we'll explore classroom strategies in the teacher workshop format, discuss fostering self-identity, break down the Independence Mastery Checklist, and finally, look at launching post-secondary success. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The DHH Empowerment Toolkit and Establishing the Foundation. Because before we get into the nitty-gritty checklists and strategies, we really need to understand the lived experience of the youth we're supporting.
You know, Mark Drolsbaugh absolutely nailed it when he described deaf dinner table syndrome. It's that intense, sinking feeling of isolation that hits even when you're in a room packed with loved ones, simply because you can't keep up with a fast-paced, multi-person conversation. It's exhausting. And understanding this very real social fatigue is exactly why we need this toolkit. To set our baseline, we have to remember that hearing loss isn't just about turning up the volume. It's a condition where any part of the auditory system, from the outer ear all the way to the acoustic nerve or the brain's processing centers, just isn't working in the usual way. And as we know, this profoundly impacts how a child develops speech, processes language, and navigates crucial social skills.
Moving right into Part 2, which is one of our main focus areas for today, the Parental Guidance Guide. This is all about navigating those heavy, often incredibly polarized early decisions parents face right after a diagnosis. Families immediately hit a massive fork in the road, and these two paths are very different. On one side, you have the oralist, or spoken language framework. This stems from a medical pathological model that views deafness as a deficit to be fixed using technology like cochlear implants and intensive auditory verbal therapy, aiming for full mainstream integration. On the flip side is the bilingual bicultural, or bi-bi approach. This is a cultural model and embraces deafness as a unique identity, prioritizing visual bilingualism with American Sign Language and immersing the child in the deaf community alongside deaf adult mentors. So, how do families actually choose? Well, there's absolutely no one-size-fits-all answer here. Families have to take a hard, objective look at their reality. What is the child's specific learning style? What support programs are actually available locally? Are parents able to commit to years of intensive speech therapy, or do they have the bandwidth to learn a completely new language like ASL? It all boils down to evaluating their resources and ultimate social and cultural goals for their child. That brings us to Part 3, another major focus area, the teacher workshop format. How do we take all this foundational knowledge and use it to truly optimize the K-12 classroom? It forces us to ask a tough question. What makes a classroom truly accessible? Are we just checking off legal compliance boxes on an IEP, or are we actively eliminating the unseen barriers that block learning? This is fascinating. The ABCOCO project in Italy highlighted a massive, often completely invisible barrier, classroom acoustics. Seriously, a list of accommodations means absolutely nothing if the physical space exhausts the student with background noise and echoing walls. For real inclusive access, we need a universal design approach that marries optimized acoustics with real-time speech-to-text integration. And we have to remember that accommodations must be fiercely individualized. A deafblind student might need protactile interpreting and braille displays, but a DHH student with a learning disability, they might thrive with text-to-ASL software and modified visual assessments. Or consider an autistic deaf student. For them, predictable routines, multimodal communication, and planned sensory breaks are literally essential to prevent cognitive overload. Let's transition to Part 4. Fostering DHH self-identity. This is all about moving from a medical label to a true sense of belonging. Because before anyone can successfully advocate for themselves, they have to know and accept who they are. For a DHH student, a healthy identity means seeing their hearing technology, whether that's an FM system or a cochlear implant, as just a neutral, empowering tool, kind of like wearing glasses. It shouldn't be seen as a definitive medical label or some social boundary that holds them back. Glickman's deaf identity development models show us that this isn't an overnight realization. It's a complex journey. Students are actively navigating their place between the larger hearing society and the deaf community, cultivating supportive relationships and a sense of belonging,
maybe through DHH camps or pairing them with deaf adult mentors, is absolutely crucial to guide them to a place of confident self-acceptance. But the journey isn't always smooth, right? Educators and parents must be on high alert for red flags, because teenagers are masters at masking their emotional distress. If a student suddenly grows their hair out specifically to hide their processors, or completely withdraws from their peer group and drops their extracurriculars, they're struggling. Hearing them use negative self-talk or express feeling like a burden means we need to step in and offer support immediately. Which leads perfectly into part 5, our final core focus area for today, the Independence Mastery Checklist. This is where we make the critical shift to self-determination. I absolutely love this timeline. It's all about intentionally shifting the burden of accommodation management away from the adults and onto the student over their K-12 journey. Look at ages 3 to 10. We just focus on foundational self-advocacy, like basic device mechanics and simple disclosure scripts. By middle school, they should be actively problem-solving and leading segments of their own IEP. And by age 14 and up, it's full legal literacy, understanding their ADA civil rights, and coordinating directly with vocational rehab. It is vital to understand the difference between self-advocacy and self-determination. Self-advocacy is the mechanics. It's knowing how to ask a teacher for help or asking to change a battery channel. But self-determination, that's the higher-level problem-solving. It's being in a high-stakes job interview, realizing the room's acoustics are awful, and having the internal resilience and confidence to independently pause and negotiate a better setup. We absolutely cannot fall into the half-job trap. Listen, if we teach a student how to name the parts of a hearing aid, but we don't teach them how to negotiate their accommodations with a stubborn or hostile workplace manager, we failed them. We have literally only done half the job. Real, true readiness means active, applied instruction where the student takes the wheel in real-world scenarios. Finally, part 6, launching post-secondary success. Because K through 12 is a protective, legally mandated bubble, and graduation pops that bubble, we call it crossing the transition cliff. And this cliff is brutally steep. Right now, national data shows that 52% of deaf and hard of hearing individuals are unemployed. Only 48% are employed. That is a jarring, unacceptable statistic. If we want to flip those numbers and ensure success, we absolutely cannot wait until a student's senior year of high school to start planning for the adult world. To guarantee better outcomes, IEP teams have to stop this subjective guesswork and start asking the hard transition questions using specialized diagnostic tools. What extracurriculars are genuinely building their problem-solving skills? What specific accommodations will this student need in a future workplace? Have we actually brought a vocational rehabilitation counselor on board yet? These questions need answers long before graduation day. So here is our concrete 3-step framework for transition to equip teens to advocate for themselves. 1. Shatter that isolating one and only dynamic by actively pairing the student with DHH mentors. 2. Role play. Practice those high-confidence self-disclosure scripts so they don't freeze up when peers or bosses ask questions. And 3. Embed self-determination and legal literacy goals directly into the IEP text to make them binding. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a challenge. You now have the blueprint. Between the parental guidance guide, optimizing the teacher workshop format, and executing that independence mastery checklist, the tools are right there in your hands. So how will you use them? Are you ready to stop just passively accommodating and start actively transferring power to the next generation of deaf and hard of hearing leaders? The future of their independence really does start with the systems we build today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.